Hi, I'm Ray with another ghost story. Or is it a ghost story? I don't think it can be termed as ghostly. Make your own mind up when I've finished telling the story. I'll leave you to fathom that out for yourselves. It all started many years ago when I was in my teens. There was a building site near to where I lived. It used to be a lovely area of, basically wasteland, but there were trees, bushes, grass, weeds. It was lovely, full of wildlife. There was a derelict church there, which we used to play in as kids. That was good fun. And they basically razed the whole lot to the ground. And they were building this housing estate, which was awful. I wandered over there one afternoon just for a walk, and I noticed a big hole in the ground, a huge hole, and a huge sewer pipe coming out from underground into this hole, about must be 5 feet diameter, big concrete, the concrete sections they put together, huge sewer pipe. And I thought, that looks interesting. I wonder what's in the pipe. I thought it wouldn't be a good idea to go in there without a torch, so I decided to save it for another day. In fact, it was the following day that I went back with a torch. I had a pretty decent torch in those days. And I clambered down the hole, looked into the tunnel, wondering, should I go in there? I called it a tunnel, it was a pipe. Should I go in there? Got the torch shining in there. It looked all right, no water, it looked safe enough. Still see the pinpoint of light at the other end of the tunnel. So I started my journey through the pipe. Either side of the pipe, every now and then, there were other pipes coming in, which I assumed to be sewer pipes up to the houses. And this would have been under the road, which wasn't yet built, of course. It was quite an eerie experience, really. I felt something, I sensed something, I don't know how to put it. I just felt that I needed to go further into the tunnel for some reason. As I walked along the tunnel of the pipe in the dark, I could hear the sound of water dripping. There shouldn't have been water there. It was dry. The sewer wasn't in use. The smell was damp. I had no idea what had compelled me to walk into the pipe. Why? Why had I done it? Now I was halfway along the tunnel. I had to continue to the end. As I neared the end of the tunnel, I could feel the cooling air, the breeze wafting on my face. I was almost there. There was something strange, the way everything echoed in that tunnel, and the noise of the water dripping. There was no water in there. The houses hadn't been built. There was no water. I clambered out of the hole, the big pit, the other end, and I looked back. I'd only come about 100 metres, that's about the length of the tunnel, probably only 80 metres long. I looked back. Where's the housing estate? The housing estate had gone. I looked up, where was it? Disappeared. I tried to get my bearings. I looked down the hole, the pipe was facing that way. Where's the housing estate? Then I noticed the church. There were trees everywhere. The church, bushes, shrubs, grassland, weeds. It was as it had been years before. Except the church, the one thing I noticed about the church, which had been completely derelict when they demolished it, it was all in one piece. It wasn't derelict at all. The church was standing there beautifully. It looked lovely. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know whether to feel afraid, scared. I just didn't know what was going on. I wondered at one stage, had I fallen in the tunnel, knocked myself unconscious, and I was dreaming. Do you dream when you're unconscious? I don't know. My head seemed right. I didn't seem to be damaged in any way. So what was going on? I wondered whether to go back into the tunnel and just go back to the other end where I'd come from to see what happened. But looking at the church, that was about 40 metres away, I suppose, 50 metres. I decided to wander into the church, as it was now a beautiful building, far from derelict. There were two huge oak doors. As I got to the church, I noticed one of them was open, just slightly. I pushed it a little further and peered inside. Dusk was falling, and I thought it would be dark in there, but there were candles everywhere, all lit. So it was, although the lighting was fairly subdued, there was enough to see. And I could see down the aisle, as I looked at the altar, there was the priest down there, standing facing the altar. I crept in, very carefully, very warily. I crept into the church, and he turned and looked at me. "Greetings," he said as he walked towards me. I just didn't know what was going on. The Derek Church was now a perfect church with a priest in there. Beautiful building. One thing I did notice as he walked towards me, all the candles everywhere, no electric light anywhere, no electricity, which I thought was odd. Where's all the lighting? "Welcome," he said to me as he got closer. He looked me up and down. I was wearing jeans and t-shirt, if I remember correctly. Definitely had jeans on, and he's looking at my jeans, looking at me, and he said, "Ah, you're from London." I looked around. I said, yes. I thought I'd humour him. I didn't know what to say. I said, yes, that's right. "I can tell," he said. "Is that fashionable now in London, what you're wearing?" And I said, yes, very fashionable. Yes, it is, that's right. He was a strange chap, and he obviously thought me strange. And I began to wonder at that point, seriously wonder, because it had crossed my mind before, had I somehow gone back in time? Through that tunnel, through the pipe, was it some sort of portal, gateway, time warp? I didn't know. I'd heard about that sort of thing and thought it was pure fiction. But if that was the case, then it did explain a lot why the church was now far from derelict. And this chap, he knew something. I'm sure he knew something, the priest, the way he was looking at me. So I said to him, "It's a lovely church. When was it built?" 1200, he said, around about 1200. So I said, "Oh, that would make it..." And he said, "Well, it's 600 years old now, isn't it?" So I said, "Oh, yes, of course it would be. Yes, 600, yes, so 1800. He knew that I was quizzing him. He knew I was asking about the age of the church, so I could discover the year, and it was 1800. But it couldn't be. How could it be? This portal thing, this time thing, surely didn't exist. I asked him where he lived. Did he live far? Was he local? "Oh, yes," he said, "not far, just in the village." The village, well, where I lived was a town. It was now a village, or it was then a village, obviously. "Is the fishing good?" I said, "down by the coast here?" "Thriving," he said, "thriving fishing village, yes. We have a lot of fishermen, they do very well." And then he said, "I'm sure things will change in the future." And he looked at me quizzically. I said, "Yes, I'm sure they will. Everything changes, doesn't it? The future, no doubt, will bring a lot of changes." And he said, "I wonder what they will be. Be interesting to know." And on that note, I thought, I'm going to leave. I'm going to get back now to my own time, because I wasn't worried. I was inquisitive. I wanted to stay and find out exactly what was going on. It would have been lovely to wait till the next day, go into what he called the village, which was now my hometown, and have a look round. All that time ago, hundreds of years ago, to see what it was like. But I decided to go. And I said to him, "Thank you very much. It's nice to have met you." And he said, "Yes, you better go before it's too late." I didn't ask him what he meant about that. I didn't want to know. So I left the church, headed back. Dusk really was falling now. Headed back to where the big hole in the ground was and the sewer pipe. I couldn't find it. I looked everywhere. Where was it? I'd left my torch at the entrance to the sewer pipe. I thought I hadn't needed that as I was going to the church. I left it there ready for my return journey. I couldn't find the sewer pipe. I looked everywhere. There's the church. There's the trees. I didn't know what to do. I thought I'd stuck back in time. I eventually headed back to the church and he was standing in the doorway, smiling at me. "It's getting dark," he said. "Are you lost?" He knew exactly what was going on. I said, "I am lost." I said, "I can't get back." "Wait there," he said. He went into the church and he came back with a lantern, candle in there, which he lit. And he held this lantern. He said, "Follow me." We walked through the long grass back to where I had been originally. And then he went into the wooded area, just there where the hole in the ground had been, but there's a wooded area. And he said, "I might be able to help you. Just keep following me." We went into the woods. And there was this cliff face, only about 20 feet high, chalk, a big chalk face, and a sort of cave entrance there. And he gave me the lantern. He said, "It's there, go in there and keep going. Don't stop, don't look back, just keep going." So I said, "Oh, I will, thank you, I will." I didn't know what else to say to him. I wanted to talk. I wanted to say, "This is 1800, I've come from 1960, whatever." But I just wanted to get back. The cave was awful, it was dreadful. The candle in the lantern barely lit up anything. There were tunnels off the cave each side, only smaller ones, so I kept to the main path, as it were. I don't know how far I walked. It was a long way, probably the same length as the pipe that I'd come through. I walked and walked. Eventually the tunnel was getting smaller. I thought there was no way out. Then the chalk became like clay. It was earth, and some of it was crumbling. Then, as I rounded a corner, I saw light. Again, light at the end of the tunnel. What a beautiful expression, I thought. There's light at the end of the tunnel. I almost ran the last few metres, and I came out into the daylight. Sunshine. I got the lantern. The candle had gone out. Why is there sunshine? It was dark. This was completely, I just didn't know what to think. I must have gone back in time. I'd got the lantern. I'd lost my torch. I didn't know what to think. There was the building site. The church had gone. As I turned to look at the cave I'd come out of, it was the sewer pipe. I'd come out of a cave. It's now the sewer pipe. I clambered out of the hole. And I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to do. I went home. I didn't tell anyone. And a day or two later, I took that lantern to an antique dealer, just out of interest, because I still wondered whether it was some kind of dream. Had I been dreaming? Was it some kind of, I don't know. The antique dealer looked at it. He said, "Oh, that's nice. Where'd you get that from?" I said, "Oh, it's been in the family for decades." He said, "That's really nice." He said, "That's late 1700s, that is." I said, oh, right. Oh, that's interesting. Worth a bit of money. Do you want to sell it?" I said, No. I'm going to keep it. I didn't care what it was worth. I didn't want money. I wanted to keep that lantern. That was the only thing I had that reminded me or told me that I hadn't been dreaming. I'd actually gone back in time. You're probably thinking that's the end of the story. It's not. Something else came to my mind. I remembered, some years before all this happened, I remembered someone disappeared. There was a chap that lived locally. I remember reading it in the paper. There was a chap locally that disappeared. He'd last been seen on this, before the houses were being built there, on this piece of land, huge piece of land. He'd last been seen there. Someone had seen him. I think it was some children. The police had interviewed people and who saw him where and everything. And I think some children had said they'd seen him go into a little wooded area. And after that, no one saw him. He'd been missing for several years. I wonder where he was. Was he back in 1800 and something?